we have been thinking about the various aspects of worshiping God. We worship God, we adore God, we think highly of God, we praise God, primarily for God being holy, and secondarily for God being almighty. Now today we are going to think about a third thing that we praise God for. In the Trisagion, we say, Holy art thou, O God, holy art thou, Almighty, and then we say, Holy art thou, Immortal. We praise God for being immortal. When we say God is immortal, we mean that God alone is immortal. Immortal does not mean here continue to live without death. That's not the meaning of immortal here. That's not the immortality of God. St. Paul speaks about God's immortality in his letter to Timotheus, chapter 6, verse 15. He says, God alone is immortal. Sometimes we think that angels are immortal. We mean that, well, angels are living and they don't have death. They continue to live forever. But that's not the immortality of God. God is immortal in the sense that God has no birth and God has no death. God has neither birth nor death. Because, there's a reason for that. Because God is beyond the limit of time. All the living beings, the whole world is within the limits of time. We are within time limit. So we change according to time. We have a beginning, we change, and we end. But God is beyond time limit. God does not change. God has no birth. God does not have death. How do we know that? On what basis do we say that? We say this based on the fact that time itself is a creation of God. Time is a part of the world. And time cannot be a part of the creation, no creator. Time is a part of the creation. And God is the creator of time. If God is the creator of time, God cannot be within the time limit. God has to be outside time limit. So we say that God has no birth, God has no death. God is immortal. So we praise God for being immortal. God, you alone are immortal. So this is actually a scary truth for us. Because if God alone is immortal, we all have death. However hard we try, our life comes to an end. We die. But there is something else that our tradition teaches us. There is a certain relationship between God and world. Between God who is beyond time and all the living beings within time. There is a certain relationship. And that relationship is clearly stated in John's Gospel, chapter 5, verse 26. There it says that God alone has life in himself. God alone has life in himself. So what about us? We don't have life in ourselves. In a song we say that Christ is the source of life. That's exactly the idea there. God is the source of all life. God alone has life in himself. And we, the living beings in the world, don't have life in themselves. So the life we live, the life I live is not my life. I live with the life of God. Let's try to understand this idea further. Adam became a living being when God breathed life into the earth, into the mud. Now, it's God's life that makes Adam a living being. And when this life returns to God, Adam goes back to the earth. Adam becomes soil again, one more time. Let's think about a light bulb. How does this light bulb light? Electricity comes from somewhere and passes through the bulb, and the bulb lightens. So the electricity that lightens the bulb is not the property of the bulb. It does not belong to the bulb. It comes from somewhere. It only passes through the bulb. In the same way, the life that makes me a living being is not my life. It comes from God. So I don't have my own life. The life is God's life. Only God has life. We don't have life. We appear to live by the life of God. Actually, this is a great thought. Let's think about this idea a little further. Think about a mango tree. The mango tree has thousands and 10,000s of leaves on it. If you look at each leaf, you see that each leaf is a living being. Each leaf has its own birth, life, and death. The mango tree itself is a living being. It has its own birth, life, and death. So another question we ask is, what is the relation between the life of the leaves and the life of the mango tree? The life the life energy that make them living beings. We can easily see that the life is the same. It's the same life. It's the same life that passes through the mango tree and the leaves and make them living beings. Think of my body. My body is made up of thousands and millions of cells. Each cell is a living body, living being. And I am made up of millions of living beings. I am a society, a huge society of living beings. It is the same life of God that makes me a living being. Now, let us think of the whole earth as a living being. The entire earth as a living being. And we are all the cells of the living being. The whole earth is made alive, kept alive by the life of God. Actually, this is a great thought. It helps us to overcome the fear of death. Once we know that we don't have life in ourselves, there's no need to be afraid of death, because the life is not mine. So why should I worry about it? This life which is in me is already God's life. Probably St. Paul talked about that when he said that my life is hidden in God along with Christ. So our life, the life of all the living beings, is hidden in God. We all live with the life of God. And this is what is the meaning of saying that God alone is immortal.